Iran says the U.S. is to blame for the delay in an agreement on the revival of the 2015 deal.
What matters so far is the US foot dragging in giving a response. The US government is responsible for the current condition of the JCPOA and the failure to implement the agreement. We can move to the next stage if the US shows its serious political will in action.
The spokesman also said Iran responded to the draft text proposed by the European Union in a constructive manner. Kanani said Tehran has shown ample flexibility in the talks, but he noted that a few very important issues remain to be settled before a deal is cut. The spokesman added that the U.S. and Europe need an agreement more than Iran. He said that the country wants a sustainable deal that protects its legitimate interests.
We have repeatedly emphasized that we want a good, strong, and enduring deal. A good agreement, in our view, is one that protects Iran's national interests, is sustainable, and is based on a time frame, so Iran can ensure the other side is honoring its obligations.
The spokesman added that Iran will not be kept waiting for the West and will not tie its national economy to the talks. Tehran submitted its response to the EU's proposed draft text a week ago. The U.S., however, says it is still studying Iran's response. The deal was thrown into chaos when former U.S. President Donald Trump walked out of it and reimposed sanctions on Iran. Tehran now wants guarantees that the U.S. will not abandon the pact again. The EU foreign policy chief calls reasonable Iran's response to the bloc's latest proposal on the revival of the 2015 deal, known as the JCPOA.
There was a proposal from me as coordinator of the negotiations saying, this is the equilibrium we reached. I don't think we can improve on it on one side or the other. And there was a response from Iran that I considered reasonable.
Borrell also said that a meeting on reviving the deal could be held this week if the United States gives its own response. He noted Washington's reply was expected last week and that a meeting was planned then but was canceled. He expressed hope that the U.S. response would help conclude the talks, adding that the world will be much safer if the JCPOA is revived.
There was a proposal from me as coordinator of the negotiations.
To discuss that further, we're joined by Said Mustafa Khoshcheshm, political analyst, joining us live from Tehran, and also Marcus Papadopoulos, historian and political analyst and author, joining us live from London. Let's begin with Mr. Khoshcheshm and your thoughts, sir, regarding this delay in the U.S. response.
Well, I believe I've already told you several nights ago that Americans, they have come to realize the logic that winter is approaching. As energy prices are rising, there will be implications and there will be consequences, especially for the Europeans and then the Americans. These will not be just shivering in the cold soon. No, it's beyond that. It's about, we're talking about economic, social, and security and political impacts and complications and consequences of not seeing the Iranian crude in the market, especially in the West. Just a couple of nights ago, the Swiss police chief said that our assessments show that we will experience rioting in winter. The situation in the Netherlands, in France, in Germany, in the UK economy is worsening, and there is no doubt about that. There are many proof about that. But here, the Americans know the logic, but because they've been the first world power for several decades, they are in the habit of seeing themselves as the superior side. They're feeling arrogant and conceited all the time. They don't care about people shivering in the cold, in Europe probably, but they just want to show some kind of resistance. This is because of their arrogance, because of their conceitedness and a feeling of superiority. Obama said, we are an exceptional nation. Donald Trump said only America, America first. Others, we don't care. So what matters here is that this feeling of superiority always leaves an impact on the U.S. to lose the unique times and dates. But let's take a look a little back. Iran sent its replies last Monday. Then Europeans, or even Americans actually, said that they sent their private reply to Joseph Borrell on Friday. And then 2 days later, on Sunday, the Iranian president, who rarely speaks about the JCPOA because the nuclear deal is not his main agenda. His main agenda is something else, looking to the east and improving Iranian economy domestically through expanding ties with the neighbors, with many other countries that we call geographical east, actually. But he said, we are not going to withdraw in any kind of negotiations, including the talks, the Vienna talks. Then a few hours later, the three European leaders started talking about the nuclear deal with Biden, the US president. The situation, I believe, is very, very clear. And Mr. Borrell says that I believe Iran's response has been reasonable. After a week, it took him a complete week to realize that Iran's response is reasonable. No, Iran has always been reasonable. I believe the winter is cold. That's why they have come to their somehow to their senses in Europe, and they are still in back and forth to the U.S. And it seems that Americans are in trouble with regard to developing a resolve. They seem to be very much shaky. If it's because Biden's administration is too weak, he cannot, bring harmony to different, institutions of power. I mean, the Congress or his administration, or it's because of Israel. I don't know, but I know that the Israelis have never troubled Americans' attainment of strategic interest as a strategic partner. They have their differences, but they work out these differences in the benefit of each other, not in troubling each other. So what I know is that the Americans are procrastinating the talks, delaying the talks, despite all the allegations that they made that they are always ready for everything, that it's Iran that's dragging its feet, and it's completely clear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khoshesh. Mr. Papadopoulos, in your opinion, what does this delay in the American response signify? Is it a sign that they might not want to commit to any new agreement?
Well, I suspect that if the Americans are dragging their feet, so to speak, it could be on account of Washington having to devote a considerable amount of time to reassuring the Israelis. But nonetheless, it would appear, and I emphasize appear, that the JCPOA nuclear deal is on the verge of being revived. And should that occur, anyone who seeks peace in the Middle East should rejoice, because the JCPOA goes a long way in attempting to foster peace and stability in West Asia. Now, it appears that the Americans have made a number of concessions to the Iranian side, including releasing considerable amounts of Iranian assets which are currently frozen in South Korea, and also removing a number of Iranian companies and banks from the sanctions list. So we have to ask the question, why has America made those concessions? Well, it is certainly not on account of America seeking détente and rapprochement with Iran. No. My contention is that the answer partially revolves around the war in Ukraine, and specifically Western sanctions on Russia, because the West's sanctions on the Russian economy have proved to be an abysmal failure. The Russian economy has made staggering successes since the sanctions on it came into place, So much so that since February, the Russian economy has made a profit of hundreds of billions of dollars. However, the same cannot be said for Europe's economies, including the British economy. As a result of the West's economic crusade against Russia, a catastrophe is now on the horizon for Europe, in which millions upon millions upon millions of Europeans, including Britons, will fall into poverty. And whilst the Americans care nothing for mankind, they do not wish to see their allies and friends in Europe, in the form of governments, collapse. So the Americans could have made the concessions to the Iranian side as a way of increasing the amount of Iranian crude oil which is imported into Europe, because by the end of this year, Russian exports of oil to Europe will have been drastically reduced. So that could be a key reason as to why the Americans have made concessions to Tehran. But also there could be another reason. The Americans, as a way of trying to open up another front against the Russian Federation, could be trying to entice Iran out of its strategic relationship with Russia by the promise of lucrative oil and gas contracts. Now, I do not believe that Washington will be successful in that endeavor, but nonetheless, I would submit to you that that could very well be another reason for why the Americans have made some very significant concessions to Iran.
So, Mr. Khoshchesh, in your opinion, have we reached a point where there is either a no deal, or it's like the make or break point right now when it comes to the JCPOA?
Well, I believe that Americans are not capable of saying that there won't be a deal, that the talks have failed. They cannot tolerate that. There are very serious impacts for them. Some of the people might believe that when Joseph Borrell said Iran's responses were reasonable, he was actually developing pressure on the United States. But I doubt that. I believe that they already know that the Americans would sooner or later will have to actually go for their response. They aren't just trying to, trivialize what the Iranian demands in order to help Biden manage domestic audience, because Biden is not powerful enough, his administration is not powerful enough to confront many rivals at home. So they need to, manage the domestic audience. Just today, there was a narrative, an informal fact sheet coming out in response apparently to an informal set of information that was released a couple of days ago here, but of course it was not documented. Nobody approved it, but it seems that now we are on the verge of the war of narratives between the two sides. I believe Mr. Borrell actually knows, he always knew that Iran is reasonable, and he has just triggered the war of narratives. Now, we are not in a rush. If Americans, have made up their mind, okay, fine. If not, time is in Iran's interest, and to their loss, and to the Europeans' loss. And it's not the former administration who said, in Iran, who said that any deal is better than a no deal. It's vice versa. The Iranian administration of President Raisi and the Iranian negotiators have proved through their actions, their bargaining and negotiating skills and everything, that having no deal is better than a bad deal. What we have requested is just write down your verbal promises in written if you're sincere. First. Second, provide us with one specific guarantee that we've been requesting. Third, there have been ambiguous words and phrases, probably a few, but these are ambiguous words. that would keep the door open for any future US misinterpretation to defy its undertakings. And we do not want that. All these things happen in the JCPOA. And the use of verbal promises was what Mr. Kerry did. None of his verbal promises came true. Iran has learned the lesson. And it's not just something that they've done to Iran. With regard to their negotiations, even to their friends like Japan, like Europeans, and many others, they do the same tactics in order to keep the door open for their future defiance. Having no deal is better than a bad deal, so Iran's waiting to see its demands met.
Exactly. And since you pointed that out, I would like to finish with Marcus Papadopoulos and his comments regarding what you just said, Mr. Khoshcheshm, that Iran believes that no deal is better than a bad deal. And Mr. Papadopoulos, we also have pundits saying that maybe just having no deal and the current situation right now is also in the best interests of the United States. Is it or is it not?
Well, I'm certainly of the firm conviction that no party wishes to enter into an agreement which is a bad one. So I understand fully the sentiment of the Iranian government. But again, I can only stress what I said moments ago. A catastrophe is on the horizon for Europe's domestic households and industries. And that very much applies to Britain as well. We could see by the end of this year and certainly into 2023, governments across Europe collapse because of mass poverty as a result of the West's economic war against Russia. So again, whilst the Americans do not care about people falling into poverty, they do, however, care about their lackey governments collapsing, because in the event of governments collapsing in, say, Greece or Italy or France or Bulgaria, those governments could be replaced by nationalist governments which will put their country and their people first, and which will be fervently anti-European Union and anti-NATO. So the Americans are trying to prevent a catastrophe from occurring by saying to the Iranians, we will revive the JCPOA, and in return, you will have the opportunity to flood, so to speak, Europe with Iranian crude oil, which of course will be greatly beneficial to the Iranian economy, but still, I do not believe that that will avert what is a catastrophic situation on the horizon for the whole of Europe, including the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Marcus Papadopoulos, historian and political analyst and author from London. Also, we had with us Mr. Said Mustafa Khoshcheshm, a political analyst from Tehran. Thanks to both of you for sharing your thoughts and views with us.